Before we dive into this incredible story, make sure you're part of our journey. Hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and get ready for a story that will leave you thinking. And if you love inspiring tales, a like goes a long way. "She's holding up traffic again," someone muttered as horns blared across the busy intersection. The elderly woman trembled under the weight of her grocery bags, invisible to the sea of commuters streaming past, their eyes fixed on phones and watches. Winter wind cut through her thin coat, much like the impatient stares slicing through her dignity. Morning rush hour transformed Fifth Avenue into a battlefield of hurried footsteps and revving engines. Business people clutched coffee cups like shields, students huddled against the cold, and drivers drummed fingers on steering wheels as the crossing signal blinked its final warnings. No one noticed the old woman's silent struggle, her arthritis-twisted fingers losing grip on plastic bag handles. A black SUV slowed nearby, its tinted window rolling down slightly. Behind designer sunglasses, a familiar face watched the scene unfold. As the light changed and impatient pedestrians surged forward, the man in the baseball cap quietly exited his vehicle, leaving his startled driver behind. Keanu Reeves stepped into the crowd, moving against its current. If this moment made you feel something, imagine what's coming next. Hit that like button and stay with us. Subscribe now. Eleanor Parker had been making this same journey every Tuesday for 43 years. From her small apartment to the discount grocery store, then back again with whatever her Social Security check could afford. Today, the arthritis in her hands had flared worse than usual, turning simple plastic bags into instruments of torture. Her doctor had warned against carrying heavy items, but delivery services were luxuries for people with smartphones and credit cards. A taxi driver leaned on his horn, gesturing angrily as Eleanor inched toward the curb. Two teenage girls swerved around her without looking up from their screens, nearly knocking her off balance. A businessman in an expensive overcoat brushed past, his shoulder bumping her arm as if she were merely an inconvenient street sign. Eleanor felt her right grocery bag beginning to tear, the weight of canned soup and potatoes straining the thin plastic. The crowd's impatience was palpable, a living thing feeding on the city's relentless rhythm. A woman in a business suit checked her watch 3 times in 30 seconds, loudly sighing to no one in particular. A food delivery cyclist swerved dangerously close, his insulated backpack a blur of corporate logos. "Some people shouldn't be out during rush hour," someone muttered just loudly enough for Eleanor to hear, just quietly enough for the speaker to maintain plausible deniability. 3 different car horns blared in dissonant harmony as Eleanor reached the center of the crosswalk. The walking signal had already begun its countdown, 15, 14, 13, and she was moving at half the expected pace. She felt her chest tighten with familiar anxiety. The light would change before she reached the other side. It always did. A cold drop of rain landed on her cheek, nature's perfect punctuation to her mounting distress. Keanu moved with purpose through the crowd, his long strides carrying him against the human current. His bodyguard half rose from the SUV driver's seat, an automatic response to his client's unexpected departure, but a small hand gesture from Keanu kept him in place. The actor pulled his cap lower as several pedestrians did double takes, that momentary hesitation of recognition that he'd learned to spot decades ago. "Is that?" A young woman nudged her friend, phone already rising for a potential photo opportunity. But Keanu wasn't focused on his usual, careful dance of celebrity. His eyes remained fixed on Eleanor, now frozen in the middle of the crosswalk as the timer counted down. 7, 6, 5. The first impatient car inched forward, its driver leaning on the horn as if the noise could somehow teleport the old woman from his path. The surrounding crowd had already forgotten her, their collective gaze shifting to the next light, the next block, the next moment. Things are about to take a turn. Don't miss what happens next. Subscribe, like our video, and keep watching. The light changed. Traffic surged forward like a river breaking through a dam. The SUV driver who'd been first in line slammed his palm against the center of his steering wheel, the horn's blast echoing between buildings. Eleanor clutched her groceries tighter, her knuckles white with strain, trapped in no man's land between impatient vehicles and indifferent pedestrians. The bottom of her right bag finally surrendered to physics, the thin plastic splitting open. Canned vegetables and a small carton of milk crashed to the asphalt with a sickening finality. "Jesus Christ, lady!" shouted the driver, his face contorted in a mask of metropolitan fury. A chorus of horns joined the first, a discordant urban symphony. Eleanor dropped to her knees, desperately trying to gather her spilled groceries, invisible tears mixing with the now steadier rainfall. A passing truck sent a spray of dirty water across the intersection, soaking her thin coat and the sleeve of her faded dress. Someone laughed, a short, sharp sound that cut deeper than the winter chill. Keanu reached the edge of the crosswalk just as Eleanor's grocery bag failed. Without hesitation, he stepped into the street, raising one hand toward oncoming traffic in a universal stop gesture while keeping his head down. The SUV driver's expression shifted from anger to confusion, his horn falling silent as he recognized something different about this particular pedestrian. "It's okay," Keanu said quietly as he knelt beside Eleanor, his voice barely audible above the traffic noise. He began gathering her scattered groceries, carefully placing cans and the miraculously unbroken milk carton into his own canvas tote bag that he pulled from his jacket pocket. "I've got this. Let me help you across." His words carried no judgment, no impatience, just simple human kindness offered without expectation. Eleanor looked up, confusion evident in her weathered face. Her lips trembled with words she couldn't quite form, decades of city living having taught her to distrust unexpected assistance, but something in Keanu's gentle eyes broke through her practiced wariness. Meanwhile, recognition began rippling through the intersection like stones dropped in still water. A woman stopped mid-stride, her coffee cup frozen halfway to her lips. A teenager gasped and elbowed his friend. Phones emerged from pockets and purses, screens glowing with anticipation. "That's Keanu Reeves." The whisper spread across the crowd, gathering momentum with each repetition. The SUV driver's expression transformed from confusion to shock to a strange kind of embarrassment as he realized whom he'd nearly hit with his vehicle. Other cars continued to honk, their drivers still unaware of the celebrity in their midst, but the immediate vicinity had fallen into an unusual hush, the background noise of the city temporarily muted by collective surprise. Keanu gently took Eleanor's arm with one hand while balancing her groceries in the other, supporting her weight as naturally as if they'd been companions for years. "Small steps," he murmured. "We're in no rush." The intersection had transformed into an impromptu stage, with Eleanor and Keanu at its center. Traffic had reluctantly paused, drivers leaning forward in their seats for a better view of the unexpected drama. The rain continued to fall, catching in the glow of headlights and traffic signals. "I don't want to be a bother," Eleanor whispered, her voice carrying the distinct tremor of someone accustomed to apologizing for their existence. Keanu's response was immediate and firm. "You're not." "Not at all." He positioned himself between her and the most aggressive vehicle, a physical barrier against impatience. The driver who had honked so insistently now sat silently, his earlier anger replaced by a complex mixture of recognition and shame. Social media was already capturing the moment. A young woman live-streamed the scene, her commentary a breathless mixture of celebrity excitement and unexpected emotional impact. "Oh my God, it's John Wick helping an old lady cross the street." Others were taking photos, recording videos, their usual urban indifference momentarily shattered by this collision of Hollywood and humanity. But not everyone watched through screens. Some witnesses lowered their phones, struck by something more meaningful than a celebrity sighting. The businesswoman who had checked her watch earlier stood motionless, her briefcase hanging forgotten at her side, something unreadable crossing her features as she observed. This story is only getting deeper. What would you do in this situation? Comment below and let's talk. Halfway across the intersection, Eleanor's remaining grocery bag gave way. Potatoes and apples bounced across the wet pavement, rolling under the wheels of waiting cars. A collective gasp rose from the growing audience. Without hesitation, Keanu set down his tote and dropped to one knee, now fully exposed to the gathering crowd. His baseball cap slipped back, revealing his face completely. Recognition rippled through the intersection in waves of whispers and raised phones. "Let me," insisted a young man in a tech company hoodie, suddenly stepping forward to help gather the scattered produce. His unexpected assistance was like a spark in dry timber. A woman in scrubs joined him, then a construction worker with calloused hands, and finally the businessman in the expensive coat who had bumped Eleanor earlier. The very same people who had ignored or resented her moments before now competed to be of service, their earlier indifference transformed into performative concern. Eleanor stood bewildered at the center of this sudden attention, her small frame made smaller by confusion. Keanu noticed her discomfort immediately. With a subtle shift in posture, he created a protective space around her, his body language clear to anyone watching. Help was welcome. Intrusion was not. "Thank you," he said to the helpers, his voice both grateful and gently dismissive. "We've got it from here." His words carried the quiet authority of someone accustomed to being heard. The SUV driver emerged from his vehicle, smartphone in hand. "Keanu, hey, can I get a quick pic?" he called out, his earlier road rage now replaced with celebrity excitement. The transformation was jarring, from threatening horn blasts to eager fan in seconds. Several others echoed his request, closing in with phones raised. The circle around Eleanor tightened uncomfortably, the helpful impulse already shifting to something more self-serving. Keanu straightened to his full height, his expression unchanged, but something shifting in his eyes. "Not right now," he replied, voice level but firm. "We're trying to get these groceries home." He gestured toward Eleanor, deliberately bringing attention back to her, to the actual human being at the center of this moment. Maybe we could all focus on that. The words were spoken softly, almost as a question, but they carried unmistakable weight. A moment of awkward silence followed, broken only by the ambient city noise and the continuous click of phone cameras. The SUV driver's smile faltered. "Yeah, sure, of course," he mumbled, retreating a step. Others followed suit, creating a small bubble of space. In that pause, Keanu turned back to Eleanor with genuine concern. "Are you okay? Do you live far from here?" he asked, his attention fully on her rather than the spectacle they'd inadvertently created. Eleanor's weathered face softened slightly. "Just 3 blocks," she replied, voice steadier now. "Tuesday is shopping day." "Let me walk with you," Keanu offered, picking up the now full tote bag with one hand and gently taking Eleanor's arm with the other. The intersection had become a strange tableau. Traffic still halted, pedestrians forming an uneven circle, phones recording every move. But as Keanu and Eleanor began walking toward the sidewalk, something unexpected happened. The businessman in the expensive coat stepped forward again. "I can carry that," he said, gesturing to the tote. It wasn't a request for a photo or an autograph, just an offer of assistance. Keanu studied him for a moment, then handed over the bag with a nod of thanks. The woman in scrubs moved to Eleanor's other side, offering additional support. "I'm heading this way too," she said, though no one could know if that was true. One by one, strangers began to form an impromptu escort. Not crowding, not filming, just accompanying. The SUV driver watched from his vehicle, phone lowered to his side, something complicated working across his features. Nearby, the businesswoman who had been repeatedly checking her watch now stood completely still, tears gathering unexpectedly in her eyes. A teenage boy who had been first to recognize Keanu deleted his video, suddenly ashamed of his initial impulse. The rain continued to fall, but gentler now, more cleansing than cold. As the unusual procession moved away from the intersection, something lingered in the space they left behind. A question hanging in the air, unspoken but felt. What had just happened here? Was it simply a celebrity sighting or something more profound? It's not over yet. The best part is coming. Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss it. Three blocks passed in a gentle procession that felt somehow outside of regular city time. Eleanor gradually relaxed, sharing small details of her life. Her late husband Howard, who had worked 40 years at the post office, her grandson in Seattle, who called every Sunday, her cat Butterscotch, who was probably waiting by the window. Keanu listened with genuine interest, asking questions that revealed actual listening rather than polite patience. The small group of helpers maintained a respectful distance, creating a protective buffer between this quiet conversation and the city's relentless pace. "This is me," Eleanor finally said, indicating a modest brick apartment building with a worn awning. The businessman carefully carried the groceries up the front steps while the woman in scrubs held the door. Keanu stayed beside Eleanor, matching his pace to hers without any sign of hurry. In the narrow lobby, an elderly neighbor emerged from the mailroom and stopped abruptly, eyes widening in disbelief at the unusual entourage accompanying her friend. "Mrs. Parker, is everything all right?" she asked, gaze moving uncertainly between Eleanor and the famous actor at her side. Eleanor smiled, perhaps her first genuine smile of the day. "Yes, Margaret. I've had quite an adventure at the crosswalk." Her voice carried a newfound steadiness, the tremor replaced by something almost like pride. After ensuring Eleanor's groceries were safely delivered to her apartment door, the impromptu helpers departed one by one. The businessman lingered last, awkwardly shifting his weight before finally speaking. "I'm sorry about earlier," he said simply. "At the crosswalk." Eleanor acknowledged his apology with a dignified nod. Keanu remained silent, allowing the moment to belong to them. This wasn't about him. Outside the building, a small crowd had gathered, word spreading through social media about the celebrity sighting. Keanu's bodyguard had repositioned the SUV nearby, watching with professional patience. As Keanu emerged from the building, phones rose predictably, but there was something different in the atmosphere. A strange kind of reverence mixed with the usual excitement. A few people approached for autographs, but many simply nodded in quiet acknowledgement. "That was really something," said a young woman who had followed from the intersection. "Not the celebrity part, I mean, though that's cool too, but the way everyone started helping." Others murmured agreement. The moment had transcended the usual celebrity encounter, becoming something more meaningful. Videos were already spreading online, comments sections filling with unexpected reflections rather than the typical fan reactions. As Keanu prepared to return to his vehicle, the businesswoman who had been repeatedly checking her watch approached. "I was so focused on being late to a meeting that doesn't even matter," she said quietly. "Thank you for the reminder." Similar moments replayed across the city as videos of the incident spread. People pausing in their routines, looking up from their phones, seeing the invisible members of their daily landscape for perhaps the first time. In her apartment, Eleanor carefully placed her rescued groceries in their proper places, moving with newfound deliberation. Outside her window, she could see the lingering crowd gradually dispersing. The rain had stopped completely, late afternoon sunlight breaking through the clouds. Butterscotch rubbed against her ankles, unaware of his owner's unusual day. Eleanor opened a can of tuna, a small weekly luxury she normally saved for Sunday, and placed it in the cat's dish. Today felt special, she explained to the uninterested feline. Across social media, millions watched a Hollywood star help an elderly woman cross the street. But what resonated wasn't celebrity. It was something far more profound. The moment spread not because of who Keanu Reeves was, but because of what he revealed. Our capacity to see each other, to pause our urgent nowhere going, to remember our shared humanity. Eleanor Parker became visible that day, not just to a famous actor but to an entire city that had been looking right through her for years. Wow, what a story! If this moved you, imagine what else we have for you. Hit that like button, drop a comment, and let us know what you think.